All right, let's get your business news now with Ropiwa Madzena. Ropiwa, talk to me. More results out, this time momentum.
That's right, Celia. Overall improvement from the COVID-19 peak, but there are still some growing pains and some recovery elements that need to be done in the business there, and that's what we're focusing on this hours. At Momentum Metropolitan announced strong annual results today with a peak in normalised headline earnings and an increase in operating profit for the period. Let's actually bring in the CEO of Momentum Metropolitan, Jeanette Marais. Thank you very much, as always, for joining us. Now, you did see that there was an overall improvement, I suppose, from the peak of the pandemic, but there was a little bit of a lower sales and lower sales volumes for the operating period. And what would you say drove that particular lower volume that we saw?
Thank you, Rafiwa, for the opportunity to be here tonight. Look, I think, it is undeniable that the impact that the economy is having on the pockets of South Africans, whether it is the very high interest rates, high inflation, high petrol prices, the fact that people suddenly, have to almost make another plan in terms of providing for their own electricity, has had a massive impact on our consumer. And the South African economy has not given us any growth. So from that perspective, I think that vulnerability remains in the market and remains for all of us. But still, for us, a very pleasing set of results because, we haven't seen massive drops in our new business sales or in our value of new business. It's almost more of a sideways move. But in the light of our earnings results that we've announced today, a very pleasing set of results for us.
And with that set of results, what would you say are then some of the positives that you are seeing as we start to see a more solid recovery across different sectors since 2020?
Yeah, I want to almost, take it back to 2018 when, we as a management team have rejoined the business in the attempt to do a turnaround. And I think that if you look back at the last 2 years' results post-COVID, it is clear that, the set of plans and the set of strategies that we've put in place is starting to pay off. And in a way, if you look at all of the results, whether it is our new business sales, whether it is, the declaration of dividends and the share buybacks that we've announced, as well as our earnings numbers, it's very clear that there's been a clear reset of our entire business to a new level. And one of the things that I would say has been, a great contributor to this is the fact that we have a set of business units who are all empowered and accountable businesses, each with its CEO, each of its own management team, and each focusing on their own market, their own product, and their own competitors. And that has really played out for us in a very, very positive way. Out of the 8 different business units, only 2 over the last year have actually not been able to grow their earnings from last year.
Yeah, and let's speak about one of those divisions, the investment business of Momentum Metropolitan, not seeing all that much growth when it comes to investment. What do you think that says about the appetite or the confidence in the asset class for South African assets at the moment? Does that concern you at all, or is it part of what you just mentioned in that there's a recovery story underway here?
Yeah, so, Momentum Investments, prior to becoming Group CEO, I was CEO of that business. So, it's a great question. I know that business very, very well. So firstly, the earnings for Momentum Investments have gone sideways. There was a very small decline in earnings. But I have to mention that it was off record earnings the last 2 years. So we're actually quite pleased with the set of results that we've had there. Also, Momentum Investments, in the retail market has actually gained 5% market share over the last 2-3 years. So clearly a business that is very well positioned. But you must remember that, we always measure ourselves against what we delivered last year. And and just recently in the last week, the latest industry stats has come out. And it's the first time in many, many years that the retail investment industry in South Africa has actually gone backwards with net outflows. So I think, that's far more of a function of the market than it is of Momentum Investments. But what is fascinating is that we've seen a massive flight to safety. What do I mean by that? We've had record years, 2 years in a row now, of clients investing their pension funds money in guaranteed annuities. Now, when I started in this business, that was, the way in which pension fund money was invested. And then we saw, this new product, living annuities, where people actually take the risk upon themselves. Now, the last 2 years, due to markets, but also I think the uncertainty, we've had record years where clients now say, when I retire, I want a guaranteed annuity. I want to know what my income is going to be, and I want it guaranteed for life. But actually, that's been a record sales, area for us. So very different outcomes in very different places in our business.
Indeed, indeed. And I suppose you'll share a similar story when it comes to the claims ratio. I mean, we've dealt with extreme weather patterns, the impact of load shedding and what it does to people's lives, and that ripple effect that it has. How have all these components that South Africa and I suppose the rest of the world is dealing with impacted on the claims ratios for the business?
Yeah, so, what you're referring to now is quite specifically Momentum Insure, our short-term insurer, and you're 100% right. The two areas of the highest claims that we've experienced was the weather-related claims, an absolute spike in those claims over the last year. And, interesting that you mentioned that, but also power surge claims. And then, of course, the one you didn't mention is still vehicle theft is at its highest. So, the crime rate in the country is certainly also not helping. And we've seen those rates, spike. Now, unfortunately, the only way in which to really manage those risks is to increase your premiums. And that just means that our consumer is paying higher in order to have their same assets insured and to make sure that we carry that risk. And we have to now start to pass that on to clients. Where in the past, you always try and see how much of that you can absorb without charging your clients more. But across the industry, the short-term industry, there's been massive premium increases over the last year.
And then finally, if you will, the outlook for the business. You've got a shareholding in Outsurance, and I'm just wondering about the opportunities that this is going to unlock for Momentum going forward.
Yeah, so maybe to just explain what that is exactly. Since 2015, our group was a co-investor alongside Rand Merchant Investment Holdings in a business that we call, the Investment Managers Group. And that's really a business where we buy stakes in small boutique asset managers in South Africa. And we then provide them with capital and distribution and marketing and support to help them grow. Now, with the unbundling of RMI about a year ago, their stake in that business, was almost non-core when they became Outsurance Holdings. And what we've done is it took us a year to negotiate the deal and to finally conclude it last week, but to actually buy out the full stake in the IMG. So it's not a direct shareholding in Outsurance, but rather in an asset management, a group of affiliates of asset management businesses in South Africa.
Thank you very much for that update, and thank you for clarifying all of those details for us this evening. That is the Group CEO of Momentum Metropolitan, Jeanette Marais, joining us this evening, speaking about the issues around the current climate, the operating climate, but still relatively optimistic about doing business in South Africa.